and welcome to the next edition of the DEFCON Warning System Digest. My name is Eric Wasson. I am the Deputy Director of DEFCON Warning System, and with me is Billy Auger. And our topic today is going to be preparation for not just nuclear war, but basically any type of disaster. This is we're not going to go into a lot of gory detail because each person's needs is going to be unique to their situation, their location, what country they live in, what they have access to. So we're going to keep it pretty basic. So I do want to start out with what the one universal truth for survival is: the need for survival for humans. There are three basic needs. That's water, food, and shelter. That's universal regardless of where you live. And the order of those three will change depending on the unique circumstances. So, for instance, if you are lost in a hot desert, water is going to take a higher priority over food. If you are lost in the woods by a creek, shelter and food might take the priority over water because you have access to water right there next to you. So those three will change slightly, but those will always be the top three. For any type of disaster, and I know DEFCON Warning System, we put a huge emphasis on nuclear war. That's what we do. But for any type of disaster, everybody should have a basic 72-hour preparation kit. That means that you are set up to go 72 hours, a full 72 hours, without any kind of external access to water or food or shelter. That you have enough bottled water, you have enough non-perishable foods that you can survive for 3 days without having to leave your house. That's actually very easy to put together. The rule of thumb for water is 1 gallon per person per day. And obviously that's the old imperial method because I'm stuck in the United States. Billy, what can you translate that to liters?
I think it's about 4 gallons, although don't quote me on that. Don't quote me.
Okay. You can do the math and cover that in a second. But anyway, 1 gallon per person per day. That covers drinking water as well as hygiene. Food, you want to focus on calorie content. And so for food, you need approximately 1,500 calories per person per day. If you have the ability to go a little bit higher, that's fine. If you're down around 1,000, that's kind of like bare minimum. Obviously, the more active you're going to be, the more calories you need. But roughly 1,500 calories per person per day on non-perishable food items, canned food, things like that. Please do not forget a can opener. That is a common mistake people make with their preps. So that basic 72-hour kit should get anybody through any kind of small emergency situation, such as a power outage, severe weather, hurricane, anything like that. That 72-hour kit should be perfectly fine. Now, unfortunately, in the event of a nuclear war scenario, that 72-hour kit is not going to be enough. It'll be a start, but you're going to need more. And so my rule of thumb, and this is just me personally, is the 72-hour kit. My wife and I, we have those set up. They're ready to go for power outage, a blizzard, that type of thing. But for nuclear war, I say 72 days, not 72 hours, which we do have that as well. Now, I know that sounds like a lot, but that's the reality of it. So, if you do the math, you're going to need a fairly decent corner of a room or pantry to store that kind of stuff. But you need enough due to the radiation levels of fallout, which Billy is going to go into here in just a second. You need enough food and water that you can stay inside your shelter for an absolute minimum of 2 weeks. It might be more than that, it might be less than that, but that's kind of where we start. It helps if you have a radiation detector or dosimeters so that you can make a determination for yourself whether the outside ambient radiation is safe or not. But 2 weeks is, again, that's kind of our starting point. So if you have enough to last 2 weeks, again, then then what you run into is, okay, now it might be safe to go outdoors, but you've gone through all your preps, so now what do you do? So you obviously need to be able to go past that 2 weeks. And the final thing I want to bring up before I turn it over to Billy is another common mistake people make is they might use all of their preps before they venture outside, and that's not what the purpose of emergency preps are. Emergency preps, such as food and water, are designed to transition you over to a subsistence living scenario. And so by the time you get about halfway through your stored preps, you should already be in the process of being able to hunt, fish, gather berries, nuts, and I know radioactivity is a thing when we talk about that, but Billy will go more into that. Finding a freshwater supply, things like that. So, in that case, you would need a minimum of 4 weeks, if not more. That's why I say 72 days is as opposed to 72 hours. So that means that at, let me do my math here, 36 days, you would need to start finding replacements for your stored preps at that point. So those are the basics. They apply to just about anybody, regardless of where they live. Again, depending on the country you live in, you may need to adjust those just slightly, but the rules of water, food, and shelter are universal. The fourth need of survival is security. I'm not going to spend any time on that because we do not, DEFCON warning system as an organization, we do not promote the armed militia, survivalist stereotype that might come off. But I will just stop and say that the security is the fourth need of survival. You need security to protect the first three, and I'll just leave it at that. Billy has some information on the radiation side of things and how that would apply to your survival needs. So, Billy, if you want to go ahead and start in on that.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. So first I'm going to start off with understanding a bit about radiation, because we need to understand our enemy. So there are three main types I'm going to go into. There are other types, but I'm not going to go into those. You've got gamma radiation. It is highly penetrating, but not that ionizing. So what that means is it can get through maybe a couple of centimeters of lead. It's that penetrating. But it isn't that ionizing, meaning if you're getting hit with gamma radiation, it's not as bad as getting hit by beta radiation. But what is the worst thing to get hit by is alpha radiation. Now, luckily, your skin can protect you from alpha radiation. It really is that badly penetrating. It's basically just helium gas without any electrons. So think about someone shooting helium particles at you. It could be stopped by potentially a sheet of paper or even a few centimeters of air. So I think we should now move on to the effects of radiation. So after a nuclear blast, you're going to have significant amounts of fallout being given off if it's a surface. If it's a surface detonation, if it's an airburst, you'll have less given off, but you will get some fallout. Now, if you're caught outside in fallout, the first thing you should do is try to get inside. That is the key thing you must do. Get inside. When you get inside, you need to take all your clothes off. Yes, strip naked, and then you need to shower. Don't use conditioner. Use shampoo or even just soap. Just try and get all the radioactive dust off of you. Now, inside that dust, you'll have a whole host of different radioisotopes, and they will emit a variety of alpha, beta, and gamma. You really need to keep those away from you. Now, the likelihood is you're probably not going to develop radiation sickness unless you've been exposed to heavy fallout and you haven't taken a shower and you just left it on you, or you've been drinking, the black rain that comes after a nuclear blast. Your main concern is going to be cancer. But you could live for years before developing cancer. So if you're faced with a survival situation where you have to choose between eating contaminated food and not eating, you should go for the contaminated food because it's better than dying of starvation there and then. That's only in the most dire situations. Now, let's say you're out scavenging and you had a Geiger counter on you, let's say, and you found a tin of food and, I don't know, some berries on a tree or something. If you went over to the berries and you put your Geiger counter next to it and you heard all this clicking coming off this berry, so there's lots of radiation coming out of the berry, there's not much you can do about that because you'll likely find that it's picked up radioactive isotopes from the soil and they're actually inside the berry. But if you had a tin of food and you saw radiation coming off of, you detected radiation coming off of it, you could just wash the tin and that will get rid of the worst of it. Another thing I'd like to talk about is water. Now, depending on a whole host of things, your water might be contaminated. If you put your Geiger counter to it and you're getting loads of radiation coming off of it, you're going to have to distill it. So you can search up all these distillation setups online, you can do yourself. But one key thing is, if you do distill your water, you need to add either mineral solutions to it, because you need those electrolytes to survive. If you don't, you could potentially die of dehydration from just drinking distilled water. And the next thing is, you need to if you don't have any mineral solution to put in your distilled water, you need to make sure your diet makes up for those minerals. You can search up online, the mineral content of white rice, for example. You need those electrolytes to survive. The next thing I think I'm going to go into is how long it will take for the fallout to subside, the radiation, the background radiation to subsist to levels where you can go outside. Now, really, you need to stay in your shelter for at least 2 weeks as a bare minimum. By that point, the worst of the radioactive, as I'll show you on the third slide now, the worst of the radioactive isotopes will have decayed by then. But that doesn't apply for when salting happens. Now, salting is a really nasty type of weapon. I think the Russians might be doing it on the Status 6, one of their nuclear torpedoes. Now, cobalt salting is where you add cobalt 59 to the weapon, and it gives off cobalt 60. Now, cobalt 60, as you can see from the decay profile I put up there, gives out mostly gamma. So that means even if you're wearing a hazmat suit, the gamma radiation would still pierce through and potentially give you cancer or radiation sickness if you were unlucky enough. So it would take roughly 35 years for the radiation to subsist to mostly normal levels after a cobalt weapon detonation. So I would say hope that they don't use that on you, because if they do, then the whole 2 weeks thing goes out the window. Is there anything else to add that you can think of, Eric?
On several important things as far as specifically the difference between radiation being in food or radiation just being on the container of food, and those are two totally separate issues. So that's why canned food is important in your stocks. If If it gets any kind of dust on it that contains alpha radiation, you just wash those off. But the food inside is not contaminated. It's been kept safe by the metal making the can. And then the bit about the minerals in the water was extremely important. A lot of people do not know that they need distilled water actually deprives your body of minerals that it needs, and so that's good for a short-term solution. But you do need to supplement those minerals.
Oh,
Yes, go
one
ahead.
important thing I just thought of. Now, we've been talking about radiological threats, but I think there's a really important one here we need to discuss: biological threats. After you've had a major disaster like a nuclear war, you're going to find that typhoid, dysentery, cholera, they're going to be the new in thing. You need to minimize the risk of that. So what you need to do, you need to be washing your hands after every meal with soap and water. Or if you're concerned about if your water's clean or not, boil it. Put it on a running boil for 10 minutes. That means you see bubbles coming to the surface for roughly 10 minutes. I know you'll lose some water to evaporation, but believe me, you do not want cholera, typhoid, dysentery, or other waterborne diseases. Avoid them at all costs.
That's a very valid point, especially in urban areas where the number of bodies decomposing in a small area is going to be a lot higher than, say, out in a rural area. So yeah, that's extremely important. You're correct. But anyway, one of the things, if you have the ability to get a radiation detection kit, that is very important for you to know when it's safe to leave your shelter. Now, again, we use 2 weeks as a rough bare minimum estimate, but that is going to vary greatly depending on where you are in relation to a detonation, the type of isotopes being given off. So, radiation detection kit, if you can get one, is extremely important. Also,
If you can't get a, sorry.
no, go ahead.
Uh, No, if you can't get a radiation detection kit, you can have a go at trying to make it yourself. It's not too difficult. There's guides you can find on YouTube which show you how to make a Geiger counter. But yeah, I do recommend getting one. They are pricey, some of them. You can get some cheaper ones, but yeah, they are really important to have. Make sure you have one.
Yeah, are you talking about like I think it's called the Kearney?
Uh, just any a Geiger counter. At the end of it is just a piece of wire inside of a low pressure gas tube with a little piece of film on the end, connected to some other electronics. So it's not impossible to make. You can make it.
So yeah, if you can get a hold of one, that I won't go as far as say it's essential, but it will be a big help to you.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to touch on before we end this real quick is the economics of stockpiling. For people that are on a low income budget, frequently what we'll hear from them is I can't afford to stockpile that much food, and we understand that, we get that. What I would say to anybody who is on a low income or a fixed budget where it's difficult to buy things in bulk, simply add $5 or £5 or €5 or whatever your denomination is to your grocery budget. Just add $5, and that $5 is dedicated to getting some cans of food, some bottled water, and you just spend that $5 and that's it. And you would be surprised at how quickly you can build up a stockpile just with that extra $5. Just make sure that you mark it as such and set it aside. So that's actually fairly easy to do. Again, you'd be extremely surprised how quickly you can build up.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in here. Eric was talking about, what you can do for, $5 every time you go to the grocery store, or $10 or something like that. That doesn't seem like a lot. And I know a lot of people, how do you hold this phone? I've never done this before. A lot of people say, $5 wasn't going to make a difference. What difference does it make? Well, let me show you what difference that it makes. I did the $5, $10 every time I went to the grocery store plan. I did that over, years. And this is what I got. This is my storeroom as of now. So as you can see, I have here what represents 2 years supply of food. 1 year if it's because it's me and my wife. So there's two people. There's two people, 1 year supply of food. There's over a year's supply of bathroom tissue. God, people never think about bathroom tissue. Please think about bathroom tissue. Nobody wants to use leaves and corn cobs when they need to go to the bathroom in the apocalypse. There's paper towels. Here's chocolate because I love chocolate. I've got a bunch of toothbrushes because you don't want dental problems because there's not going to be a dentist. Razors because I'm a guy and so I need to shave. I got some, Kleenex. Here's some pens to write stuff down. I've got medication. I'm not showing you that because it's got my name on it and stuff like that. I've been stocking up trash bags, all sorts of and plus there's cleaning supplies, bags, and I'm still loading stuff up. So this is what you can accomplish with $5 to $10 every time you go to the grocery store. Just pick something up, throw it in your larder, and forget about it. Get the freeze-dried stuff, so it'll last, that's 30 years shelf life. Pick up stuff that doesn't have a shelf life, like I saw razors and toothbrushes and cleaning supplies. When things start to get a little more squirrely, then you can go for the stuff that has long shelf life, but a ketchup, chocolate, potato chips, bread, things like that, and shorter shelf life as a crisis grows. But like I said, this is what you can do with $5 to $10 a week. And I know I'm kind of holding this at a weird angle, but this is what you can do a little bit at a time over time. Start now so you're not, having to get all this stuff as disaster looms. Get it now while there's stuff while no one's panicking, everything's on the shelf, everything is normal, nice and calm. You can just casually do it. But this is what you can accomplish a little bit at a time. So yes, you can do this.
So that's it. Very basics. Again, if you go to the DEFCON warning system forum, we have an entire section dedicated to much more detail on what is needed for survival after a nuclear war. So you want to go that for details. We've just barely scratched the surface here. It is possible to survive a nuclear war, but you do have to take a few steps to prepare for it. Do you have anything else you want to add, Billy?
Yeah, actually, one more thing. Now, there was an old TV show back in the 1970s, I believe, called Protect and Survive. Now, they advocated in the event of a nuclear blast to go and put mattresses up against the sides of your staircase and try and hide under those. Now, lots of people ridiculed that, but the idea in them that you need to put as much distance between you and radioactive emitters, that's true. If you can put the more distance you have between yourself and radioactive emitters in your shelter, the better, more likely you are to survive. So yeah, distance is key.
Yes. So yeah, mattresses, furniture, books, dirt, sand, anything that you can use as material to absorb that radiation between you and the source, the less radiation will get to you. So that's a very valid point. Take anything in your house, take doors off their hinges, move furniture, move refrigerators, so that you have as much mass between you and the outside as you possibly can. So that's a good addition. But again, I do want to emphasize we have barely scratched the surface on the details. This is mostly just an introduction and to let people know that nuclear war is survivable. If you survive the initial detonation, then your chances of survival are actually pretty good if you have taken a few basic steps to prepare for it. So please visit our forum to get a lot more information. You can also ask questions of the staff. We'd be more than happy to talk to you. But that pretty much wraps up this edition of the Digest. On behalf of Billy and myself, we wish you a good day, and please stay safe.